Last season, on My Comic Shop History, a comic book store fell, a community united, and a podcast was born. Now, out of the ashes of the alternate reality saga, a new story begins. This season, on My Comic Shop History, we will explore the world of comic book collecting as we answer the question, what makes a collector? This is Season 2 of My Comic Shop History. Welcome to Season 2 of My Comic Shop History. I am your host, Anthony Desiato. We're back, and we are recording on a Wednesday, New Comic Book Day, at a comic book shop, the Spider's Web, in Yonkers. This season, we are going to be exploring the world of comic book collecting. And when I decided that that was going to be the focus of this new round of episodes, there was one person who I knew had to be on this episode. So please let me introduce my first guest, Mr. Brian Claudio.
How are you?
We are also joined by another gentleman who is no slouch in the collecting department, my former Alternate Realities coworker, Steve Ryan. Welcome.
Hi.
All right, so welcome to both of you guys. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
So, Brian, when I had you on the show last season, I promised that we were going to talk about comic book collecting, and we didn't get to it.
Yeah, I remember.
But the time has finally come.
You get a whole episode now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's, as I mentioned to you guys, when we were talking beforehand, this new season, there are a lot of different topics and themes that I want to cover, within this world of comic book collecting. So we're going to do an episode that's all about collecting original art. We'll do an episode on toys. We'll do an episode on dads and what happens to your collecting when your family expands. So those are kind of sort of the areas that we're going to hit as we move forward. But I thought you guys, and you, Brian, in particular, would be perfect to have on for this first episode because your collection really encompasses a lot, and I feel like there's a lot that we can talk about that's sort of going to tee up this season and everything that's to come.
Well, yeah, it's true. I do collect a lot of different stuff within the collecting of comics. Comics, toys, posters, original artwork, as far as sketches and stuff like that. It's a lot. It's nuts, yeah, for sure.
And Steve, what are some of the things that you are currently collecting?
Currently, it's some figures, not as much in comics, but figures, the pop vinyls, which you and I have talked a great deal about. But in the past, it's been, statues, posters, some original art sketches like Claudio. I have like one piece of original page art, and then some of the higher end figures like the Hot Toys.
Cool.
But then there's always the kind of stuff that, that's the usual stuff, the toys, the comics. I'll go out there and I'll see like a Captain America toothbrush and I'll pick that up. By itself, it's absolutely nuts. But when you put it on the shelf with all the other crap, it actually blends in very nicely.
See, Steve Ryan, you're such a pedestrian when it comes to collecting. You don't have, how many toothbrushes do you have?
No, see, we've talked a great deal about this because he goes for everything, and I'm a little, I don't want to say very selective, but a little more selective in that, I try and limit it to toys and figures because aside from comics, I also do, movies, and I do movie posters. I collect a lot of DVDs and whatnot, and I feel like if I didn't collect those other things, I probably would go full tilt into everything else and everything cap.
You know what it was? There was a time, and this is going back years and years ago, where you would never see anything Marvel anywhere. You can walk into any kind of store, and it's just a store with whatever it's sold, pharmacy or whatever. But since then, you walk into any store now, and there's something there that's Marvel.
I want to say it was probably like the mid-'90s, because I know, and Anthony, you can probably back me up, that growing up, I grew up reading comics, but there wasn't like a lot of merchandise.
No.
You might be able to get, the T-shirts they had, you had to order from the comic book store, and usually they had that in the comic book.
Right.
They had like all the different kinds of T-shirts you could buy.
Right.
But you couldn't just go into like a Target or
No.
just find a comic book
No,
T-shirt.
the only I mean, if you go into like a department store, like say in the old days, like Alexander's, you have to go to the toy department.
Yeah.
And even then, you didn't really find too much Marvel stuff.
Yeah,
you
I mean,
know?
you could occasionally find figures in like Bradley's or Caldor's, but
Yeah, and this is I'm talking way back, like 60s and 70s. You know, this is
back when dinosaurs roamed the earth.
Yeah, back when dinosaurs roamed the earth and Fred Flintstone was hanging out, and no, there's plenty of Flintstone stuff, but Marvel stuff, no.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, my mother, tells the story all the time. When I was little and I was really into Superman, it was hard to find even Superman merchandise.
Yeah.
And now, of course, you're overflowing, not just with Superman, but with everything else you guys have mentioned. So, we've already mentioned, a number of things, and I kind of want to unpack all of it. And to kind of start, I want to paint a picture. Now, obviously, this is a podcast. It's an auditory medium. And, we're talking about this collection that people may not have seen. For those who did watch my Comic Shop documentary, your collection, Brian, is featured in there.
Right.
And I recently posted the clip of that Man Cave segment on the podcast Facebook page, and I'll post it again when this episode goes up. So for anyone listening to this who really wants to see it, just go on the Facebook page, watch the clip, and you can see what we're talking about. But for everyone else, we will paint as vivid a word picture as we can.
We'll use 1,000 words, obviously.
Absolutely. So Brian, I guess just to kind of kick us off here, when I saw your collection for the first time, it was pretty staggering, and it was a lot to take in. Just the scope of it in terms of the number of items, the variety of items, the way they're displayed. Again, it was really, really striking. So, would you mind just kind of describing what that room in your home looks like?
It's kind of hard to move around. There's so much stuff in it, but no, it's basically it's all Marvel. I have a ton of DC stuff, but there's obviously just no room for it. It's all Marvel, and I try to put it try to make it as orderly as possible. Avengers in one section, and then all the individual Avengers get their own little shelves or whatever. And the FF have a few shelves, and the Hulk has like 6 shelves, and Spider-Man has a whole wall to himself because that's what they sell mostly of is all Spider-Man stuff. And then on the very top, I try to put posters because that's the easiest. It's the highest up. You can see it very easily. And then it goes from like action figures and maybe mini mates, and I try to put the teams together as much as possible with X-Men and the Avengers. And then in between all the figures and all that kind of stuff, I just put all the oddball stuff in, the toothbrushes and the ball, like a baseball with someone's image on it, and statues, or there's rows of little statues, the Bowen mini
The mini bust.
the mini bust, and he had the mini statues for a while, which I really loved. I'm sad when he got rid of those. Just stuff like that, and try to put books. If the book has a nice cover to it, I'll put that up. Just basically that's, and there's just rows and rows of it. I try to. The problem with the Avengers is like 1 million Avengers, so every time I see something of Hellcat, hey, I got to get that. It's Hellcat.
Yeah, it's one thing that always stood with me from when I filmed in there was at one point you said the only thing I regret is that I don't have more room. You wanted more space so that you could display even more.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because I haven't stopped collecting, but obviously that space in itself is filled to capacity. So yeah, if I had more room, forget it. I would lose my mind.
Now, as far as the way you display things, because this is something. Sort of the OCD nature of a comic book collector is something that's going to come up a lot, I think, over the course of this season.
Now you're saying I'm sick, huh?
No.
You are, but
Yeah.
we're not saying it.
But one thing that's interesting, it's all passion, guys. It's all passion. But one thing that was always interesting to me is that you do display everything. You don't have everything in boxes tucked away.
Right.
They are displayed.
Yes. Well, I try to display as much as possible. I mean, I do have like at least 10 bins of Spider-Man stuff that isn't displayed because there's just no room. But yeah, I always try to display as much as possible. And that's why I collect like a lot of the smaller stuff, like mini mates and stuff like that, because they're just easier to display instead of getting huge statues which take up 2 or 3 feet or something. That's just I'd rather put as much as I can into what space I have.
So if listeners of this podcast want to see it in person and they were willing to pay admission, would you open up your man cave?
not at this moment, no.
No.
Too many little things that could probably go missing.
Yeah, well, no, that's not that. It's just that this time is just it's just not very practical to do something like that. I mean, one day I would love maybe if I could do what like Sweetwater, which Star Wars did. I think somebody got him a warehouse and they display everything, all the Star Wars stuff. I would love to do something like that one day. That would be something.
How big a display area do you think you would need? Like looking at the room around us now, could you fill this store easily?
Yeah, I could fill this store easily.
Do you, by any chance, know the dimensions roughly of the room that you currently use to store your collection?
9 by 15 maybe, something like that. And yeah, I mean, like I said, I have all the posters on top, and I have over 200 posters.
Speaking of numbers, that was going to be my next question. I mean, could you even venture an estimate, a guess, as far as how many pieces you have? I mean, we must be in the thousands.
It's definitely in the thousands. Maybe in 100,000 maybe pieces. If you go through every little piece, it could be 100,000 pieces easy.
Steve Ryan, can you think of any other collectors out there who who are bigger collectors than Brian?
Easily no.
That's why you're on the season premiere, buddy.
I know you go online. You see, I've seen other collections. Of people, they take pictures of their collections, and some of them are really impressive.
Are there some that make even you envious?
If they have enough, like a lot of the older stuff, yeah, I'm like, wow, I wish I had that. That's cool. There's one guy I saw was on eBay, and he was selling something, but for some reason he felt the need to take pictures of his Captain America collection. And he had it all in glass, and he had some really, really nice stuff. Some unique stuff and some older stuff that I was like, wow, very cool.
Cool. Well, there are a number of collecting habits that I do want to talk about, and I'm curious as to how they play out in your hobby. But before we get to that, could you take us back to the beginning of how this started for you? Because I feel like, and I'm curious to talk to everybody as they come on these episodes, because I feel like there is, a progression in one's hobby. You have that first impression, that introduction, where you first maybe dip your toes into the water. There's something that grabs you, whether, for me, it was a Superman action figure, and I'll be talking more about that in the next episode. But, that kind of first, just grabbed me.
Uh-huh.
And that informed a lot of what I became as a collector moving forward. And then I think there's sort of a tipping point where you really get into it, maybe to a larger extent, which clearly has happened for you. But like I said, if you wouldn't mind just kind of taking us to the beginning, what was your first introduction to this world of comic books?
Oh, well, comic books. I was about, 6 or 7 years old, living in the Bronx, and we were going to get haircuts in the neighborhood barbershop, and the guy had a stack of comics there. And so I think my brothers picked a couple, and I picked Fantastic Four Annual #3. And the cover basically just shows all these superheroes and supervillains kicking the crap out of each other. And I was like, wow, this is great. And it was a big, thick book, and there was all kinds of characters in it. I had no idea who half these characters were. All I knew was Spider-Man, I think. Maybe the Fantastic Four, because they had the cartoons at the time. And the rest of them, like Cyclops, I was like, who the hell is this guy? You didn't see his eyes. He just had this beam coming out of it. And that was the first comic book. And from then, every time I went to a candy store or whatever, there was always, they had a comic book rack, went straight to it, begged my parents, buy me this comic book. I mean, there were times when they said, no, you can't have it. I remember one time with that, my mother, we were down on Broadway, and the candy store had Avengers Annual 2, Old Avengers versus New Avengers. And the covers were always so colorful back then. And I asked my mom and pleaded with her, no, you can't have it, But since then, but as I got older, you get allowance or you work or whatever, and you start buying these things for yourself. And there wasn't, as far as toys, like we were talking about before, there wasn't really too much in toys. It was strictly the comics. And a couple of times I disenjoyed for the posters, that Marvel Mania would sell. And then in the early 70s, they came out with those fluorescent posters. And we used to buy those at the stores all the time. And it's funny, by the time I hit 16 or 17, I dropped out. Basically, I was much more interested in, I was always just interested in rock and roll, but I was much more interested in getting laid. and partying, and doing drugs and shit like that. And so around 16, 17, I kind of stopped. I wasn't buying as much. Every once in a while, I'll see like a Treasury edition, pick that up. And then around the late 70s, 78, 79, I would start picking up just the X-Men. The Claremont and Byrne X-Men. I started picking those up again. And by the early 80s, I was, this friend of mine that wasn't even in the comics as we were growing up, started going to the conventions. I started going to the shows. That's when I started again with the comics. And then in the 90s, I still wasn't so much for the toys. In the 90s, the first thing I got was this little Nightcrawler PVC figure. And I put it on the shelf. I was like, this looks really great right there. And then I started, I was at the comic shops. They would sell more and more of that kind of stuff. And I just started buying more and more and more and more. And then I would go, once we started going to flea markets and going to garage sales, and people were just selling that stuff wholesale at that time. And that's when I started really getting into it and started finding more and more stuff. And as the collection was growing, I would make more and more room for it until the behemoth now you see in that room of just all this stuff that I've been accumulating for the last, practically all my life, really.
It's interesting that you mentioned a period of falling out of it because, in speaking to people about this, not on the podcast, but I feel like a lot of collectors sort of have that. And for me personally, I'm kind of in the middle of it right now. I mean, there are a lot of things that I've collected in my career, from comics to trade paperbacks, statues, toys, never really so much until now with the pop figures, as you mentioned, Steve. When I was little, I collected Power Ranger cards, basketball cards. But, recently I found my interest kind of waning in a lot of that stuff. And with comic books in particular, and it kind of breaks my heart because a few years ago I made the switch from monthly comics to trade paperbacks. And it made sense, and, for a number of reasons. You don't have ads, and they look nice on a bookshelf, and the reading experience is better. But what I found was, I was waiting months in between trades, and then it got easier and easier to wait longer and longer before I would read anything. And then it got to the point where I just wasn't reading anything. So a couple weeks ago, I came here to the Spider's Web, and I filled out my first pull sheet in years. So I'm going to give monthly comics a try again. And that's kind of something that I'll be tracking a little bit in these episodes is, what it's like to try to get back into it. Because honestly, I miss it. I miss having that excitement for Wednesday. I miss having that excitement for new comics. I still read Newsarama and the other comic book news sites. I read the news sites far more than I read the actual comics. And that needs to change. But I do think that's interesting, and that's something that I expect will kind of pop up now and again as I speak to different collectors. Steve Ryan, I mean, I think you're probably in the middle of your sex and drugs and rock and roll phase, right? Was that fair to say?
Well, this is actually a second kind of lull in it. The first lull happened when I moved to New York again from Massachusetts, and there was a comic shop I went to in Massachusetts, Bob City Comics. And then when I moved here, I didn't know of anything, and there wasn't anything very close. Alternate is 20 minutes from me, and at that point I was 13 and couldn't drive. So really there was almost a 3 or 4 year lull where I just didn't really get any comics. And now I'm hitting that again. But it's a combination of being unemployed, but also I don't know if it's, you mentioned the wait from trades that kind of became easier and easier to wait. Did you also find, I know with me, I'm just not a fan of where the stories are going. And the resetting of characters and resetting of universes and then changing certain characters to other characters just to spike sales.
Yeah, that was definitely, I didn't mention it, but that was definitely a big piece of it. Because when I made the switch to trades, I was still reading in trade paperback form for a while. And it was probably, I hate to pile on as many other fans have, but, probably the start of the New 52 that DC did. That was kind of it for me. But it's funny, I mentioned filling out a pull sheet. All the books on there are DC Rebirth titles, which is their new initiative to sort of incorporate certain elements of characters and continuity that they moved away from. So we'll see. Like I said, it's going to be an experiment. But yeah, that's definitely a piece of it. But so for you, Brian, so you had that period where you were kind of out of it, then you got back into the comics,
Right.
and then you had that little Nightcrawler figure from the X-Men. That
Yeah.
kind of, I mean, you would say that was sort of the tipping point?
Well, I mean, before that, I was collecting things like posters, poster books, and things like that. But as far as the toys are concerned, I was never really big on the toys. That was the tipping point, right? When I got that little one, and then
What was it? I mean, can you pinpoint what it was about that got you going?
I think what it was. Well, I got Nightcrawler, and then I would go to the store, and they have one of Cable. Oh, they have one of Cyclops. Then all of a sudden you want all the X-Men, and they all look great. And then they were selling other one, Thor, and then they had a Captain America one and a She-Hulk one, which is kind of rare, because She-Hulk's not a very big, well-known household name character. And after that, it just snowballed. Because then I started going into the toy stores looking for these things and finding other things in the toy stores, little cars, little. And that was another tipping point. Actually, I actually bought an old Hot Wheels Thor car. I think it was a van, and I remember I sent away for that one. This is before the internet, so it was like I got one of those newspapers, those toy collecting newspapers, and some guy in Jersey was selling it for $10. Sent him a check. He sent me the car. I was like, this is cool. I don't know what it was about it. Maybe it was just a little kid in me, that always liked that kind of stuff. And never really got too much of it as a kid, and now I can get it.
And Thor obviously needs that van.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I mean, and again, I don't know, if you can really pin it down, but to what extent, for these things that you collect, to what extent is it that you want or need to have everything of a particular character or everything from a particular series, and how much is it you just really like that particular piece?
Well, I can't do that anymore. Well, no one can really do it anymore because there's just so much stuff out there. I mean, they market these things that, like let's say like my favorite, like Steve Ryan's is Captain America. And the thing is about that is that there's just so much Captain America stuff out there. Is that you just can't collect it all. So at this point in time, you got to just pick and choose what you do and don't like. Like the little Dorbs are very cute. I like those. The pop baubles, certain action figures. I mean, a lot of the action figures I won't even. Some of the even Marvel Legends I won't collect the Captain America because he looks like a Ferguson riot cop. And who wants Captain to look like a cop? He's supposed to be a superhero. He should look like one. So it's a little easier, but as far as getting everything. You just can't do it anymore. You just got to see what appeals to you. What appeals to your sensibilities as far as what makes the character tick.
Are there any things? I know you just gave that one example, but there's some collectors who they'll collect statues and kind of look down their noses at action figures, for example.
Right.
Is there anything like a particular type of thing where you're like, no, I don't touch those?
I don't think so.
Again, that's why you're on this first episode.
Yeah, I think it's funny. No, there's really. I don't look look. They put it out there for people to collect, and if they like them, that's great. People should be able to go and do that. But is there anything I would say? Nah, I'm not going to get that. No, I mean, there's some stuff I won't get just because I can't either afford it, don't have the room for it. But as far as look down my nose, no. And I'm not going to. I would never make fun of what other people collect, as far as this whole hobby is concerned. If they dig, those some ugly little doll-looking things. Cool, get it. Whatever you want. Make yourself happy with it. So.
And Steve, what about you? Because I know, as we've mentioned, we are both fans and collectors of those pop vinyl figures. For anyone out there who's unfamiliar with what they are, I imagine most people listening to this probably know what they are. But if they're not, how would you describe them?
They're basically these they're rounded off, but square-headed little figures on top of small bodies, about 3¾ tall. The heads are oversized for the bodies, but they've done every license imaginable. I mean, they've done, obviously, the big ones like Star Wars and Marvel, DC, but they, last year they did Rocky Horror Picture Show and Monty Python and the Holy Grail. They've done shows like Supernatural and Firefly. I mean, just they cover everything.
Speaking of Supernatural, did you pick up Bobby yet?
Yeah.
Okay, because I found it just came out, right?
It came out in most stores now, it was a Hot Topic exclusive for a while.
Okay, because I got it.
They do pre-releases for them.
Gotcha. Because I got it a couple weekends ago at East Coast Comic Con. It was like my last few minutes there, and I was just taking one last look around, and I went in like this little booth that I had kind of passed by the whole rest of the weekend, and I saw it. It was on top, and I was like, I got to get it. But now, Funko, they do a number of other lines.
Yeah, Brian mentioned the Dorbs.
Yeah. I mean, do you do any of the others, or are you strictly... Because I'm strictly pop vinyl, but what about you?
Mostly pop vinyl. I've dabbled a bit in the... Well, I have the mystery minis, but it bothers me because they're blind bagged, so you don't know who you're getting, so you end up having doubles of extra. And I've actually talked to Paul here at Spider's Web about trying to get like a trade night going, just because I have extras, and I'm like, what am I going to do with these?
Oh, that's cool. I have something about those mystery box type toys.
Yeah.
You know, like they had the keychains for a while. They had these like little keychain thingies, and you know, I'm trying to get the whole thing, and you start buying package after those
Steve Ryan has it on his keychain.
Yeah,
there.
I just pulled it out to show Tiny Captain America on my keychain.
Wait, let me get a picture of it, and then I could post it as well. I don't do traditional show notes for this podcast, but the Facebook page is basically the show notes. So if people want to see what we're talking about, they can go to the Facebook page. Got it. Well, you know, it's funny, though, with the pop figures. So, and this kind of leads me to my next point, because I feel like there's a degree of, again, addiction might be too strong a word. It might not in some cases, but certainly... And I don't necessarily use this next word in a negative way, but a certain degree of obsessiveness. I mean, and I'm speaking personally. Like, I know the things that I've collected obsessively. And even though I'm not a huge collector now, that same obsessive energy is what drives the documentaries and this podcast. I mean, I've had like a map of this season that I've been working on for weeks. And it's that, again, that sort of energy that goes into it. But I have to say, as far as, being obsessive with the collecting, I got to a point recently I'm really proud of. So like I said, I do collect these pop figures with Stephanie, my fiance, and a couple months ago we were at Midtown Comics in the city, and the Gotham pops based on the Fox TV show had just come out, and Midtown had all of them, including the Fish Mooney character. I don't hate the character, but not my favorite, and I didn't need to have it. And it was actually Steph who said, "Oh no, we should get it so we have the full set."
Uh-oh.
And I was like, "No," I said, "It's okay. Like, we don't have to."
That's it. She's in deep now.
I think part of it was, I think she actually did want to have the full set, but I think she also kind of assumed that I would. But I was like, "No, it's okay. Like, we can really just get the ones that we want," and that's what we did. And it hasn't haunted me, which I'm really happy about, because in times past, it would have. So I guess that sort of leads me to my next point for you, Brian, with this. I mean, would you describe yourself as obsessive with this?
Yeah, I can be. I mean, it's what drives me to go to the flea markets. It's what drives me to go to 20 tag sales every weekend. Just looking and looking and looking. And it's funny because, you can always go on eBay and get this stuff pretty easily. But there's no fun in that.
That's really funny too. And again, going back to the pop example, we really kind of made a point to not order them online unless we really can't find them, because it's been fun. Like, we, if we happen to be at a place where we see them, or even if we do make a special trip for it, it's still like you don't know if you're going to get it or not, and there is kind of that element of fun to it, fun in the hunt.
It's a hunt, yeah.
I mean, how do you do them, Steve Ryan? Do you?
I mostly do them in stores. And to talk more about the, like as you said, with leaving one out of the set, I find it becomes easier and easier when they make them harder and harder to get. When they're like store exclusives. Because I was going to say, even with the mystery minis, I've cut back on the mystery minis because then they'll do store exclusives where they'll have almost a full set and then 3 exclusives that you can only get at Walgreens. And then you have to try and hopefully get those 3 at Walgreens without doubling up on your set, and it just becomes a pain. And now they have with the pops, they have store exclusives, they have online exclusives, and it becomes almost a nightmare to try and collect them all. So at a point, you just have to just stand back and say, I'll get what I can get. If I can find it, yay. If not, the hell with it.
Well, you got to be, if you're in this for the long haul, eventually you will find it. Eventually you find everything. It just may take you 6-7 months.
And depending on what kind of price you're willing to pay.
Well,
which is
yeah.
the ridiculous part. I mean, some of these pops, it's
Well,
2016. I think they started in, say, 2011, 2012. So it's been like 4 or 5 years. There are ones that go for $400 or $500.
Get out. Which ones?
The original DC ones, like Two-Face, Riddler,
Really?
Green Arrow, yeah, because they've
Sheesh.
never put them back out.
Do the Marvel ones go for that much, or?
I think like a couple hundred. Like because I follow the groups on Facebook and whatnot, and it becomes like Red Skull. I think was worth like $200.
Really? I think I have
trying
that.
to sell that. Yeah, me too.
That's the original line, right? When it first
Yeah.
came out, yeah, I remember buying those.
But then again, I didn't keep the boxes because I never intend on selling any of my stuff.
That's
Right.
I'm so glad you brought that up. So Steph and I moved in together recently, and I kept the boxes. They're in the storage unit in the garage. But we had a serious conversation about it of like, do we need to keep these? And I said the only reason we really would is if we ever felt that we would sell them. And then we were both like, we don't think we would, but we ended up holding on to the boxes like just in case. But Steve Ryan, I think that's kind of like, as a collector, that's a big step to throw out the box. Was that an easy thing, or were you like, nah, little plastic things, they're cheap, it doesn't matter? How did you feel?
It was easy for me because like I've been collecting toys since literally as far back as I can remember. And I've always taken them out of a box. You know, when I was a kid, I played with them. You know, as I become an adult and a collector, you know, they get posed on a shelf. But I've never understood the idea of buying a 3D piece of art that you can only look at from one angle. You know, you keep it in the box, you can only look at it at one angle, and it's typically just a static pose with your arms by your side. And it's like, why not just get a picture? Why not just, you know, find a picture online or get, you know, original piece of art? If you're gonna buy a 3D piece, you want to be able to look at it from all angles.
Well, doesn't it depend on what the product is? I mean, you know, if you get like a Marvel Legends, yeah, you could tear it out of the box, you know, and put it on the shelf. But something like a mini statue or a bust of some kind, maybe you should keep the box, you know, because
Oh no, statues I've always kept the box just
Yeah.
in the fact that, you know, statues, not even for reselling, but for, you know, whenever I have to move. You want that styrofoam, you want that box to be able to put it back in a box and move it. Although now recently I have begun selling a bit of my collection. So I'm very glad I kept the boxes for everything.
Anything good?
A lot of the larger sideshow pieces.
Look at this guy collecting, even on a podcast. I just can't stop. I think, you know, as far as keeping the boxes and, you know, keeping things in the boxes versus displaying, I think, and you guys, you know, please weigh in. I mean, would you agree that part of what drives that decision for collectors is sort of what they're in it for? So if you're buying it more as a speculator and you're hoping that these things will increase in value and you could sell it, maybe you'd be more likely to not display them and you would keep the boxes, you'd keep them in the box, right? I mean,
Right,
versus
yeah.
if you're buying them more just to collect them. I mean, to enjoy them.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
no, yeah.
But I think you've probably made the smarter decision in keeping the boxes for the pops, because most of the collections I've seen online, they put the figure right in front, like they take the figure out of the box, but they have like the box on its side, and just the figure right in front of the box actually looks very nice, aesthetically pleasing.
Oh,
So-
yes. How to display the pops is something I spent a lot of time looking into. I've done a few different things. I think, you know, there's going to be an episode on toys later in the season, and I think it might just be all about pops, to be honest, because they've really captured my attention.
I feel because they've covered and the uniformity of it, so that you can have, you know, Frankenfooter from Rocky Horror, you can have the Black Knight from Monty Python, you can have Captain America, Batman, the Red Skull, you know, Han Solo, all standing right next to each other and looking like they walked out of the same movie because of the uniformity of the design of pops.
Yeah, absolutely. So sort of going back to what I was saying, I mean, for you, Brian, and I maybe I know the answer, but maybe I don't. I mean, really, what are you in it for? I mean, do you really buy just because you like the hunt, you like to display things, you like to look at them? Do you have in your head, like, one day I'm going to sell this stuff and I'm going to make a lot of money? I mean, what really is it that's driving you?
It's, to me, look, everyone's got their thing that relaxes them, and everyone's got their thing that they enjoy. You know, for some guys, it's fishing. You know, for some guys, it's, you know, it's you know, it's jogging, track, you know, or doing marathons.
Watching sports.
Yeah, oh yeah. For some guys, it's sports. You know, for me, it's basically Marvel comics. I mean, I used to collect DC also, but once they came out with a new 52 and a whole reboot, that was just that was like the 4th reboot in my lifetime. And I was like, I'm done with this. I can't keep going, through this every few years with these guys. But as far as why I do it, it's just, to me, this is fun. This is what relaxes me. Some people, it's television. You watch television all day, I can't watch television all day. Television drives me crazy.
Oh, we're so different.
I'd rather do this, and I'd rather, and the hunt is the fun part of this, because you never know what you're going to find. Like I said, going to garage sales, most of them I don't find jack shit. I find nothing. What was it? A couple of weeks ago I went to one, and it was a Friday, Saturday one. I didn't even make it there on Friday. I made it there on Saturday afternoon, and I'm going through a box, and I actually found a Spider-Man piggy bank from 1986. I was like, yes!
How much did you pay for it?
$3.
What a
I was
steal.
like, yes! Because if you went to Stormville and found that shit, it would have been like $20, So it was like, beautiful.
So comic book shops, comic book conventions, garage sales, flea markets, eBay, are those your primary sources?
Yeah.
Is there anything else? Did I leave anything out?
No, because I know that you can go to a private collector, but that's a little more, I guess, a little more work. I've never really tried to go to a private collector. I don't really know anyone.
Are you like kind of known now within a lot of those circles that I mentioned? I feel like you would be, like, 'cause you're a regular at these, like, people, they know you by this point, right?
The flea markets, definitely everyone knows me. The garage sales, not so much, even though a couple of years ago, because I like to get in shape, I like to ride the bicycle to all the tag sales. And a couple of years ago I was at a tag sale, and this woman was like, I've heard of you. You're the guy that rides his bicycles at all the tag sales.
I guarantee you there's at least one person listening to this who's like, I think I know this guy.
Right.
I've seen him biking around. Yeah.
All in black.
Yeah.
All in black, yeah.
And riding a bicycle.
And riding a bicycle, right.
I have a question, Brian. Back
No.
to what back to what Desi said. Is there, I don't want to say an end game, but is there like a plan for your collection? Not necessarily to get rid of it
Right.
when you want it, but
I remember years
inevitably we all pass from this mortal coil.
Yeah, I remember.
What do you plan to do with all of that?
I remember years ago, Bill Mayo, I guess his wife or his girlfriend, whoever was making him get rid of his stuff, and he was like, "Well, when are you going to get rid of your stuff? You can't keep this stuff going on forever." I said, "Here's what I'm going to do." I said, "When I die, I'm gonna dig a 60-foot pit. I'm gonna tell them to put all my shit in there, and then put me on top, and then bury it."
You're going for the Egyptian funeral? You want to be buried with all of your stuff?
like King Tut. Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, in a sense, that does sort of, that's a great question, Stephen. That kind of answers what I had asked you before about, sort of what you're in it for.
Right.
I mean, so it doesn't seem like selling it is really in the cards for you.
Right now, at my age, I'm actually, believe it or not, slowing down a bit. I'm actually seeing, because there's just so much stuff out there, you just can't get it all. So I'm actually passing a lot of stuff, and like the pop bobbles I love, and the Dorbs, and still a lot of the action figures, the 3 3/4 inch, the Legends. I still pick all that up. Anything Hot Wheels with Marvel, and they have tons of that stuff out. They're all coming out with all this great stuff now. I'm getting that. But a lot of it, no, I'm actually slowing down. And this, right at this age, I'm slowing down, but I'm not done yet.
How old are you?
56.
Okay,
I'm not done yet. Maybe another 10 years. Who knows?
You mentioned that you had that little dip in your interest, and then you got back into it, but it was the 90s, you said, where you got that Nightcrawler figure?
Yeah, early 90s.
So it's been a good while now that you've been able to sustain that interest.
Yeah.
Which to me is very interesting, because, again, in talking to a lot of people and from my own experience, I feel like, really keeping that interest at that kind of level for that amount of time, it really takes something. I mean, I know you mentioned that, it relaxes you and
Right.
all of that, but...
well, it also depends on the people producing this stuff. If they keep... They have to keep the audience's interest. The comics are one thing. Yeah, that wanes, and you can start collecting a lot of, after a while. But as far as the toys and stuff, that's really something that they have to capture what the essence, I guess, of the character for it to really, at least to make me happy. Because sometimes they don't. Sometimes they'll put out stuff that I'm like, ugh, geez, I don't think so. But that's the thing. That's the thing about the Nightcrawler character. That little PVC figure really captured the what the character was all about. He looked great in that little pose. Also if it looks really like cheap, because in the '60s they came out with all this stuff that was really cheap looking stuff, but as a little kid you love it. So that's another thing I really love about it also. But
Now,
again, I'm sorry.
Is it like specific costumes? 'Cause you were mentioning like when you mentioned Cap in his like uniform gear. I mean, that's how he's been redesigned.
Yeah,
because it's almost it's body armor now.
Right. Yeah, he looks like a riot cop.
So does it like? Are there certain things like? I know Anthony said, are there certain things you look down your nose at and you're just like, no? Is it certain costumes and certain looks of the characters?
Yeah. I mean, for some reason, I don't mind Thor looking more like a Viking. He is a Viking. Spider-Man, I like his classic Ditko Romita look. Captain America, it's definitely got to be the superhero with the wings on the head,
pirate boots,
the whole bit. It's got to be that. And then when they put out stuff like that, like I was mentioning before to you, Hot Wheels just put out a set of Captain America cars using artwork from the 40s up, and it's all classic Captain America, and it looks great.
You mentioned the piggy bank and you mentioned toothbrush earlier. What are some of the other odd items in your collection that are not what people would typically think of when we're talking about these?
And what is
things?
the most random?
Let's see. I once found a candle with a sticker or something with the Hulk on it. It was definitely Herb Trimpe artwork on it. That was very strange.
You sure it wasn't just like a generic candle and someone put like a
normal
sticker on there?
No, that's the thing. No, it was definitely...
This guy will buy anything with the Hulk.
It was like just this marble.
Like a little kid put a sticker on a candle one day and Brian's like, I have to have it.
I probably would have if I saw it.
Brian goes into a candle shop and he's like, do you have anything Marvel related? And they're like, hang on one sec.
Yeah, no, I do that actually. I actually go into, I'll go to tag sales or whatever and I'll say, you got anything Marvel? Marvel comics, another comics, anything else? Because I have all the comics,
So candle. So what other
weird stuff? Oh man, let's see. I found the baseball last year with Thor's image on it. I don't know where the hell that came from. I guess I actually found a. Marvel used to sell these years ago. They sold these like pillows, these inflatable pillows, and I have a Captain America one. And the thing about that is, I found that downtown in Midtown at a flea market. It's not even there anymore. There's a high-rise there now. And what gets me, that it was only $10. The guy had 3 of them. And I should have fucking bought them. God damn it. Because now they're worth, because I saw it on eBay, and the guy was selling it for $1,000. And he didn't even know if it inflated or not. It probably didn't. The whole point of the damn pillow is you inflate it,
Right. You
blow it up like a balloon. And if he says, I don't know if it works or not, it doesn't work. But still, he was selling it for $1,000. And that was pretty a weird item. What other weird items?
Not to interrupt, but you were like, I should have bought 3 of them. How often, if at all, do you buy multiples of things?
And now I do. If it's something
that you think is going to go up in value.
Well, if it's something older.
Right.
I mean, the new stuff, that's so mass produced. I could probably buy one, bust it 5 years from now, and buy a new one 10 years later, and there'll still be one floating around somewhere. But the older stuff from like the 60s, 70s, and 80s, that stuff is becoming very rare. So if you could find, I'm not talking about the comics. That old comics those are worth nothing. You can pick those up like nothing. But the toys, and those kind of collectibles back then, that stuff is weird. Let me see, what else did I have? What was it? Years ago, Pizza Hut had an X-Men promotion. And they actually had the pizza come in these little boxes.
Oh yeah, it was right at the start of I think the 1990
cartoons.
Cartoon. Yeah,
I actually have the boxes.
I remember they had, and they had like the little VHS cassette of like the old X-Men cartoon where Wolverine was Australian.
Yeah, I found the Captain America cassette where they had to actually do the stories on the cassette with a little mini comic that came with it. That's kind of weird. I'm sure I can keep going and going if I really rack my brain over this.
Has there ever been anything where you've seen it and you're just like, why? Why did they make that? Like, I'm thinking, as you're talking the weird stuff, you're talking the weird stuff, I remember seeing like stuff in pet supply stores.
Oh, yeah,
and it's just like, you can buy a Captain America chew toy. I'm like, I
would get that. I would. As a matter of fact, there's a set of 4 of them. I think there's Iron Man, Spider-Man, Cap, and I forget who the fourth character is. And they came in this like little box, and I actually can't find them anywhere. But yeah, they sold, and they actually have like, the little statues you throw into fish tanks. They actually have those Marvel ones I'm looking for. Okay, yeah, just a weird eclectic, group of stuff. But you said, when you said, is there anything I ever saw? Yeah, a few weeks ago I saw they had Iron Man diapers. I think they were at Toys R Us.
Now, was it Iron Man was pictured on it, or were the diapers designed to look like Iron Man's crotch?
That's a fantastic question.
I didn't buy the box, so I have no idea what the diapers look like inside. But yeah, there was Iron Man on the box, Iron Man diapers.
Was it movie Iron Man? Was Robert Downey Jr. behind this?
No. It was just a picture of Iron Man. That's it. I'm thinking, what's next?
But you didn't get those?
No.
Were you tempted?
No.
Really?
It's a bit much.
That's the line in the sand.
That's the line in the sand. Yeah,
that answers the question. I guess.
Yeah, diapers. If they come out with Thanos feminine products, that'll probably be the line in the sand too.
Fair enough.
I don't know. I'm picturing the Infinity Gauntlet in a way I never have before.
Is there anything that you ever really wanted that just eluded you?
Oh, there's tons of stuff. Yeah. I mean, and it's all stuff mostly from the 60s. They have these little wind-up toys, Captain America, I think there's a Spidey and a Thor, very hard to find. I've seen them at shows, and I've seen them on eBay. And, and if you have the money, you could buy it. But the thing is, I want to find it, at a garage sale. I want to find it at maybe at a flea market. That's where I find most of the stuff of like the Captain America pillow I was talking about before. I found that at a flea market. I found a Thor inflatable pillow at a flea market. I found a Submariner inflatable, and they're dirt cheap. And it should be. Again, like you said before, some people are looking to resell. I'm not. I will take this and I'll give it a good home. So. What was the question again?
No, I think that answers it.
Have you ever talked yourself almost out of a good price? Like, have you ever found something like, I can't believe you're selling it for this cheap?
No.
He just takes it and runs.
He takes it and runs.
No, back to the question before. I remember even in the store, you would always talk about those blacklight posters.
That's something. Yeah, that's another thing also. I have a couple of them. And I'm still waiting for that garage sale where I walk into someone's garage and they're there and they're kind of like, a little chewed up.
The Thor Silver Surfer one, right?
There's a Thor. No, there's a Thor. There was a Silver Surfer one.
I thought it was the cover of Thor fighting Silver Surfer.
There was a fluorescent poster like that?
I thought you just mentioned that.
No. I don't think there's one crazy. Of that. That I think Asgard Press put out a recreation of that poster. No, the fluorescent posters were from the early 70s. I think a company called Third Eye put them out. And they're very, like I said, you see them. I see them at comic shows every once in a while. The guy's like $700 a piece for them. Get the fuck out of here. Or you see them online. The problem with eBay, though, is that you really can't inspect them. Anything really you buy on eBay, you can't inspect. You can't really look at it. And, hey, what's this crack doing here?
Well, that's the problem with buying anything online.
Right. Well, if you buy it new, you could always return it. But eBay is a whole different story, So
I was actually surprised when you told me, this was years ago, that you were on eBay, because you always strike me as someone who's not quite in the Rich Roney category.
Right.
He's really off the grid, but I feel like you're not so far behind. Was it easy for you to make that transition to eBay, or were you resistant to it initially?
No. I was seeing the posters on eBay, and that's what got me on eBay. And I bought all kinds of weird things. The one thing I bought on eBay I've never seen before or since was, remember the Secret Wars toys from the 80s? I actually found a Falcon helicopter. Now, why Falcon would need a helicopter is beyond me, but there was it was about, 5 inches long or whatever, and there's stickers on it, the whole bit, and there's Falcon sitting in it, and I think I got it for like $14, and I thought I was going to have to fight for it. I thought, a million people are going to start bidding on it. It's going to be $50 before you know it. No one else bid on it, But again, that's kind of rare, as far as eBay is concerned.
Occasionally you get lucky like that. I've had that happen occasionally where something was priced low and I've expected a fight out of it or someone to snipe it out from under me.
Right.
And then I got it for really what I wanted it for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, sometimes, you just, you misjudge what the interest is, or sometimes it's just the right time,
Right. No, I haven't bought anything on eBay for a while now, though. I just prefer going out and hunting it down. And it's, again, it's more of a thing of being at the right place at the right time. Like with that Spidey, bank I found a couple of weeks ago. Just happened to be at the right place at the right time.
I'm curious if, let's say you lived in an area. I mean, we're in a great area where you have access to a lot of different places and shows and stuff. For argument's sake, let's say you live somewhere like in the middle of nowhere and you couldn't get to shows and you couldn't get to stores or flea markets, and like going online was really your only option.
Oh, then by all means, do it.
You would still do. You don't think that you would be? You kind of lose the fire a little bit.
No, and I don't think and if anyone's in that situation, they should definitely go online. If you're too busy and you can't make it to flea markets and garage sales, shop online. However you want to do it, that's fine. I'm not going to put anyone down for the way they go after this stuff.
As a collector, when you travel, do you like look in advance for where there are going to be stores or antique shops?
Yep.
Because I remember you talking about that when you would travel.
Once my wife and I went to Michigan, and we were going to be in an area called Troy, and I actually looked up the comic shops in the area, and I went and I found all, the guy had, because every comic shop has something different. They always have, a little something that's unique to them. And this guy had a huge pile of promo posters. So I just went through them. I go, how much is the promo? $1 each. Fine. Went through it, bought like 15 of them. I had mostly Marvel ones. Great,
Brian, I want to ask your advice. I don't know if this is something I'll ever pursue, but if I do, you're the master, so I come to you. Again, not a huge toy collector, but if there was ever a line that I was going to try to collect, it would be the Kenner Superpower. I know this is DC area, but it would be the Kenner Superpowers line of action figures based on the Super Friends cartoon.
From the 70s?
From the 80s.
From the 80s, okay.
The Superman figure, like I said, I'll be talking about that more when we do our live episode shortly. But, that was the first thing for me. I actually tracked down the Superman one on eBay, and I was really tempted to try to get more of them. So if I ever were to do that, how would you recommend I go about it? Like, where should I start?
Well, first off, are you going for mint in package, or are you going for loose?
See, that's another good question. I would want them in the package.
Yeah. Well, that you could probably go to comic shows and even flea markets. You might find them. Garage sales, maybe not so much.
Not in the package, yeah.
No, you can find them loose in the package.
And they would be cheaper.
They would be much cheaper. They'd probably be a little more banged up, but that's okay. But if you want a mint and package, you're probably better off just trying the flea markets, and not the little ones, even though sometimes you can find, but the big ones, like the one up in Stormville is huge. That whole area, actually. There's one in Poughkeepsie. There's one in Beacon on Sundays. There's the weekend ones in Fishkill.
Do you ever go to the one in Hastings? It's not a huge one, but our mutual friend Jay Mizell occasionally sets up shop there.
Yeah, I've been there. I've been to that one. I've seen Jay there. And
did you buy any movie posters?
No, I think I actually bought a comic book poster off him.
Oh, okay.
I think I bought what was it? It was like a poster blown up of Avengers Annual 4 or 5, I think it was. And no, he recognized me, so we bullshit for a little while. And I love Hastings on the Hudson. There's a great little used record shop in town also, and some great little restaurants.
We're gonna get you sponsors yet. Start naming names.
But yeah, I've been to that one. That one isn't so much. That's more like jewelry and crafts and.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to go to like a big one where everyone sells everything, So.
What's the best deal or steal, I should say, that you've ever found? Something that you're like, I can't believe that they're selling it for this.
Well, like I said, like that Captain America blow up once, and I was in Stormville once, and this guy had a bucket of Barbies, and in the middle of the Barbie was a Mego Spider-Man. And I said, how much for the Spider-Man? He goes, $1. And you never saw me get $1 out of my pocket so fast. Here you go, man.
Speaking of the money and the financial aspect of this, I mean, how do you fund this habit?
Basically, I try to buy everything as cheap as goddamn possible, and you got to take your time with it, Sometimes it's not easy. Like with the Marvel Legends, there'll always be that one figure that sells out quicker than the rest, and then you really got to do double time going to these places to see if you can find it. So that's why a lot of people just either get them online, or go when you get to see them at the store, just buy the whole set at once. That could be pricey. So a lot of the times I just try to find the cheapest price, because everyone's like the pop baubles, everyone is selling them. You can get them at Hot Topic, you can get them at comic shops, you can get them at Target, you can get them at Walmart, You get them at Toys R Us.
Barnes and Noble is usually the cheapest.
Yeah, and Barnes and Noble, and they're usually the cheapest, right? See, yeah, you do your homework.
Absolutely. The
So-
amount of pops I have to.
And again, this is the long haul. It isn't like I have a lot of. If I had a lot of money, I'd be buying those fluorescent posters, But I don't.
I mean, how much do you estimate, if you don't mind me asking, I mean, how much do you estimate you spend on a monthly basis?
Monthly. Not counting the comics and not counting the comics, because the comics are a lot less these days. Like
Yeah, well, then they'll throw the comics in.
throw the comics in. Oh man. I don't know. Maybe $500-600 maybe a month, maybe. Ain't more than that.
Now, do you partly fund this by selling some? Because you do sell as well,
yeah,
right?
I do sell as well. I try to go.
Is that like your primary income? Is what you sell?
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely funds the habit.
And where and how do you sell?
Mostly really lame flea markets.
Do you set up your own table, or do you
Yeah.
just Oh, okay.
Set up my own table. Yeah, there's one in Yonkers, and whenever there's like a little ones here and there, I know a couple of people that actually run them, and they'll always try to set up ones.
I think we need to do a My Comic Shop History field trip to Claudio's table at a convention, at a flea
At
market.
a flea market, that'd be something. Sometimes you do well, sometimes you don't. That's the thing about flea markets.
And do you sell like comic book stuff or?
Yeah, comic book stuff, and and sometimes clothing and shoes or whatever. It's funny when we were selling shoes. It's funny. More men would buy women's shoes than women. We kept seeing that. The guy was like, he wouldn't try the shoe on. He would just like kind of look at it next to his foot, and
To each his own.
his money is as good as anyone else's. I don't give a shit.
I'm remembering 40-Year-Old Virgin with Jonah Hill, where when she went to the eBay store and wanted to buy like the stripper shoes with the fish in them. And it's like, I'm not really a store.
I'm curious, when you're on the other side of the table and you're the one selling, what's your relationship like with the collectors who come up?
I'm worse than Steve. No. Basically, most of the time I'm just trying to get rid of it. So yeah, I give them the price. The thing is that all the prices are set. I have signs up and everything.
Oh, you do not negotiate?
Oh, not really.
No.
It's so dirt cheap to begin with.
When you're buying, do you try to negotiate, or do you sort of feel the same?
Sometimes. And it isn't like I'm trying to, give me 50% off. No, it's nothing like that. It's more like, if it's $30, how about $25?
Right.
I think I found an old Batman lunchbox from the '60s at one of the Stormvilles, and the guy wanted $30. I go, how about 25? He's like, okay, no problem. It doesn't. I save $5, and he still makes most of his money. So.
Yeah, I know you said, again, you plan to be buried with your stuff,
Nah.
but I mean, if you ever, hypothetically, you get to the
The
point.
burial plot on that alone would be.
Yeah, I know.
But like, let's say you get to the point where, whether now or in the future, where you're like, I'm just done with this. I want to be done with it. How do you think you would go about selling it? Would you try to sell it all in one shot?
Yeah, that's it. One shot. As a matter of fact, I always tell my wife, anything that happens to me, just contact Odo. He'll put you in contact with the right people, and just get rid of it all at once. If get a storage space big enough to hold it all. Let them come and look at it. Let them evaluate how much it all is, and then let them give you a price. Okay.
You've mentioned your wife now a couple of times,
Uh-huh.
and I wanted to bring that up because for anyone who might be listening and thinking, "Oh, there's no way he's married. No spouse would,
Right.
would support this." What is your wife's take on all of this?
She's perfectly cool with it. We're going to be married 31 years this year, and so when we first got together, it wasn't like I was as nutty as I am now with this stuff, but I was still collecting. I think I woke up and. I think we woke up one morning and I started reading a Peter Parker Spider-Man comic, and she's looking at me, and I was like, "Yeah, you got a problem with this?" And she's like, "No." I said, "Well, then why are you staring?" And she's like, "Oh, she goes, you just don't seem the type," And I was like, "Because I'm not the type." I said.
Yeah, to anyone who's never seen Brian, We talk about him riding the bicycle. He looks like he could have stepped out of Hell's Angels to see him, but he is the friendliest person you'll meet.
Right.
But building off that, when I worked at the store, yours seemed like the most healthy relationship I've seen of the customers with their wives. And I think you've mentioned that your wife collects salt and pepper shakers?
Yeah. But that was me getting her into that.
Does she also collect Campbell soup cans? Because I remember that,
not
right?
the cans, just like the imagery.
The labels?
The imagery, like the two little fat kids and you
Gotcha.
know, and all that kind of stuff. But that was me more or less, us always going to flea markets. And, if you don't collect anything, it's kind of boring to be there. So I basically, I would encourage her. Oh, you want this? You want that? There was 3 things. It was Campbell's soup stuff, salt and pepper shakers. We got about 200-300 pairs of those. And Pillsbury Doughboy.
I remember that too.
And the cool thing about the Pillsbury Doughboy was that I met he was a Golden Age artist who helped create the Pillsbury Doughboy. And I used to see him at the shows all the time. And he would actually sell me like prints and do drawings and, sign his name to it. So that's pretty cool. And I would give them to her.
Because working at the store, so many of the customers would come in and they'd be afraid of their wives. And they'd come in and I have to take off the price tag. She's in the car and I don't want her to know how much I spend. Or they'd mention casually like having to lie about how much they spend on comics. I'm like, just thinking there, like, if that's your kind of relationship, you don't have a healthy relationship. And then Brian would talk about it. It's like, oh yeah, she's cool with it.
Well, yeah.
It's very encouraging. I mean, it's funny because, I mentioned, some of the things that I've collected and then the things that I've sort of moved away from. And recently I have gotten rid of a lot of statues and trade paperbacks and things like that because my interest wasn't there.
Right.
I also didn't feel like moving them again. But I feel like there was this assumption by a number of people, including people within our alternate reality circle, who assumed that it was like, oh, he's getting married, she's making him get rid of it. And it's like, nothing could be further from the truth. If anything, she encourages me to keep this stuff, and I'm the one who says no. But more than that, it's like, if we did have that type of relationship, we wouldn't be getting married.
Yeah.
I mean, that wouldn't work for me. But I know, again, every dynamic, in people's relationships, every dynamic is different. But it's very encouraging, and Steve Ryan, as you said, healthy. I think, to see that where you each have your passion, maybe not the same thing, but you both seem to be okay with what you do.
Right. She's nowhere near as obsessive as I am. Nowhere near. We go to flea markets now. She'll see a pair of salt and pepper shakers. I'm like, yeah. She's like, nah. She'll walk away from it. But we've talked about this because we've seen other people and other couples go through this. I remember a couple of years ago, I was out Long Island at a show, and there was this guy selling his comic book collection, and the look on his face was just like one of like just dread and despair. And there behind him was this girl looking at him like, if you don't sell this, I'm going to cut your fucking balls off. This look on her face. And I told my wife about it, and I was like, well, she's like, look, this makes you happy. Why would I want to take away something from you that makes you happy? And then you're miserable. You resent me because of it. And it's no good.
Yeah.
So
it was always encouraging, and it's even in my own life when thinking about like what I want in a relationship, that's got to be part of it. Someone who's cool with me collecting what I collect. Well,
it's funny. You see more and more women now at these shows.
Yeah.
So these guys must be finding women that definitely are at the very least understanding about all this stuff. It gives hope to comic collectors everywhere.
Going back to that time when you welcomed me into your home and I filmed and we spoke, you said something something else that always stood with me. You were like, I know this is crazy, but it's my kind of nuts. And that's actually, I think, what the title of this episode is going to be, my kind of nuts.
Right.
I mean, do you still feel that way? Do you feel like it is kind of nuts? Or
yes.
I just describe it as passion, but do you really feel like it's nuts?
Well, I mean, look, there's good nuts and there's bad nuts. You could be nutty about something and it's all good. It's harmless. You're not hurting anyone with it. It's a lot of fun. Then there's bad nuts, and we're not going to get into that. What bad nuts is.
Yeah, I feel it's no different from, you've seen man caves like Claudio's full of stuff, But then you see, people with sports stuff and people who spend hundreds on signed jerseys or, merchandise of Kobe Bryant or something. And it's like, we're no crazier than they are and vice versa.
Right.
It's just ours in a different direction.
I agree. I'm curious, though. I mean, have you ever encountered any negative reactions to your collection and or your collecting habits? I mean, have you ever had someone over to your home and they see the room and they're like, oh my God, what is this?
No. Not real. No, actually, I'm trying to think. Has anyone ever said, "What, are you out of your fucking mind doing this?" No one's ever said that. Actually,
Yeah, me neither. In fact, the fun part is I have 2 nieces, and whenever they come over, they play the game of looking around to try and figure out what's new.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I guess part of the reason I think about it is, because we are talking about toys, to some extent, and
right.
Again, items typically intended for children. Are you ever self-conscious about that at all?
Well,
I'm not saying you should be. I'm just
right,
curious.
Right. Well, it isn't like I play with this stuff. I don't. I mean,
You don't do sound effects or anything?
Hey,
No,
you know what?
no.
I used to, and I think that's the foundation for
Creativity.
whatever creativity
Yeah.
and future storytelling I've pursued. I mean, I used to come up with my own storylines, and I would do the sound effects and all. Like, I played with my toys.
Yeah, me too. But
oh, you mean when we were kids?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Kids, college. I mean,
Yeah. You're not talking last week now, are you?
No.
He is, but we're not gonna talk about it.
Now I podcast, but no, I mean, like in elementary school, like I
Oh yeah,
I did that.
I had GI Joes, and again, there wasn't so much Marvel stuff back then. There was like no more. Back in the '60s and '70s, there were no Marvel figures. So I would take a GI Joe and turn him into Goliath, because he'd be bigger than the rest of the little toys.
Is that something that you do on any regular basis, sort of like modifying or customizing your stuff?
I did that for a while. I built, I did some custom figures because there were some figures that they were never going to make.
Well, that's how I feel. Going back to these pop figures, Smallville, my all-time favorite television show. Again, that Superman connection. I would kill for Smallville pop vinyls, but it's like maybe at some point, because they seem to be doing everything else.
Yeah, I can't imagine them not doing it with the amount of licenses. But to your customizing, like, have you ever taken, like, they have do-it-yourself pops. I remember when they had the Mighty Mugs, they had blank ones, and we had a ton of them at the store. Have you ever just taken the blank ones and tried to create your own?
No. Well, I would basically take a figure and buy a ton of paint, and you take a Spider-Man figure, especially ones that weren't so detailed as far as the mask and all that, and just paint it over. And I think I turned them into a stingray. Just recolored and
How could you say no one would ever want the stingray?
That's exactly it. They'll never make a stingray figure. Please, no way. Maybe if they make a Namor movie, which they're never going to make, or at this point they're not going to make. So yeah, I made a few. I'm trying to think who else I make. I made a few. I made Hellcat, but they made a figure of her since. But it was mostly the little 5-inch figures. There are guys that custom the Marvel Legends. That's something. I don't think I could do that well. Like, you could take the Rogue from the '90s and repaint her and make her Cersei from the Avengers. just a paint job, just very simple, not a big deal.
Is there a particular piece or section of your collection that's really just your pride and joy, and in a fire, that's what you would grab? I mean, is there anything like that? It's funny, the building of the Avengers teams, and I've done it in a few forms already. Those are like they had the Eagle Moss figures for a while.
Yeah, the big lead ones.
Yeah, the
little lead, but
the little I built up team of that. The Avengers mini mates. HeroClix, just did like a huge Avengers team of that. The Marvel Legends, the 5-inch figures. Those are, just building the teams and getting as many of the obscure characters as possible on the teams. With Legends, it was fun because they actually did a couple of Giant Men. They did him in his blue and gold, and they did one like his old Silver Age red and black costume. That was a lot of fun getting. and just then you put them all on a shelf. There they are, the Avengers.
Do you keep like a big bucket by the door in case there is a fire, and just big empty bucket, grab them, just sweep them all off the shelf and run?
I got a couple of fire extinguishers. If you're in a home and an apartment, you should have a fire extinguisher, regardless.
Do you have a list of everything that you have?
No. It's all in my head. Which is getting to get tough. I'm trying to remember. Did I buy that already? Do I have that already?
Yeah, that's actually interesting. I would imagine in your case, you must sometimes accidentally buy a double.
Yes, I have. A couple of doubles here and there. Nothing major. I mean, if it's very expensive, I remember buying it. But for the most part, yeah, a couple of times, I'm like, oh, shit, I got that already? Yeah, in the sell pile. There you go. Or maybe if, one of my family members, members of the character, I'll give it to them. Do that once in a while.
I mean, I guess as we sort of start to wind down here, are there any particularly memorable stories that come to mind? Again, whether it's at a flea market or a store, or just any stories, in your quest to build your collection. Anything that really stands out?
I think I told you them all already. Not really. I mean, yeah, I think I told you all the ones that, I found some really. Well, I think the weirdest time, I actually found a. I didn't even find. We were at the shop, and this guy that used to come in the shop all the time. I forget his name. He I was going to buy something off of Steve, and I think it was a comic. It was a back issue of some kind. I forget who it was, and I was going to buy it. And the guy said, "I'll tell you what." He goes, "If you give me that comic to buy, I'll give you an old fluorescent poster from the 70s, a Marvel one." I'm like, "What?" I go, "Are you sure?" And I go, "Which one?" He told me, I think it was a Thor one. And I said, "I'll tell you what." I said, "I'll hang on to this. You bring in the poster. I will trade then." And he's like, "No problem." And sure enough, a week later, he came in with the poster, and it was authentic.
Good.
And we traded, because I figured, it was a back issue of a comic. I could always find that. Mm-hmm. Getting a fluorescent poster for nothing, really. I didn't even buy the damn book yet.
Right.
Shit. That's a deal I cannot pass up. So, yeah, that's probably the strangest story.
You mentioned earlier about, how you could go to a private collector to buy your stuff. I mean, I kind of see a career for you as a private collector who other people go to, even just, to advise others in their collecting. I mean, is that something you would be interested in?
In advising? I guess, maybe.
Or even like a personal shopper.
Yeah.
Well, that's tough, because if they ask for something really specific.
But you seem like you would know, even if they ask for something really specific, you would know exactly where to start looking for that.
Right. Well, if
Anthony asked about the figures.
If it's newer stuff, but the older stuff, that's just luck. Right place, right time.
Then again, maybe if you turned it into a job, you might not enjoy it as much.
Maybe, yeah. Ask Odo.
On the note of Odo, it's really funny. So as I mentioned at the start, we're recording here at Spider's Web. I just want to give a special shout out, thank you to Paul Barrero, the store's owner, for having us here today. And like I said, we're here on a Wednesday during store hours. So if you've heard activity in the background, it's the bustle of
that was Paul.
of New Comic Book Day.
Paul.
Paul says hello. But while we've been recording here, I've spotted at least half a dozen former Alternate Realities customers.
I have my back to them, so now I feel really bad that I didn't notice any of them.
But anyway, it's been nice to see people coming by.
While you were feeding the meter, Brian showed me one of his latest purchases, which, Brian, please feel free to describe it.
It's basically a reel, like a fishing reel, and you basically catch Avengers gems.
It's a tiny fishing reel for a child that has these little plates that you're supposed to catch, and they're called the gems, and each one has a different Avenger face on them. And it's a little fishing that you drop it in a pool, and then you try and fish it out. And it's like, he shows it to me. I'm like, how did you not mention that already? This is one of the most weird things I've ever seen.
Yeah, really.
It is weird, but look, it's a cute little toy. Once that's the thing. We were talking about it. The figures you'll always find. You'll always find someone with a Marvel Legend or a Marvel Select. But that's the kind of toy that once you get it, or once it disappears, you'll never see it again anywhere. It's just gone forever. You know?
I think we might have to take a picture of that as well.
Yeah, it's right over there. Well, sure, not a problem.
Pretty much this entire conversation, we've primarily focused on
Right.
the toys, statues, etc. But how large is your actual comic book collection?
Oh, I got about, I don't know, between 45 and maybe, I haven't counted in a while. I got maybe about, let me think. I don't know, about between 50 and 60 long boxes.
Oh, I thought you were going to say 50 and 60,000 books.
No. Oh, hell no. I would think maybe around 10,000 books, maybe. Between 10 and 12.
That's a lot. That's nothing to sneeze at. But,
Right.
I don't know. In light of the rest of the collection, I guess maybe I was expecting even more.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking of getting rid of a lot of stuff. I'm actually, 'cause since I don't collect DC anymore, I'm actually thinking of just purging all my DC stuff. The toys. I got some old Batman stuff as far as toys are concerned.
Do you have any of the Kenner
Superpowers?
superpowers?
Loose, probably. I probably got them loose.
Maybe we'll talk.
Yeah, maybe. See, even on the show, we're all collecting.
Yeah. See,
It never ends.
if you're going to start that, but then you have to decide: are you getting the figures? Are you getting the vehicles? Are you getting like the play sets?
Vehicles I could do without. Playset, they did do the Hall of Justice,
Yeah.
and that would be tempting because then they could all go into the Hall of Justice.
Then-
And that's your
because
perfect
that's the display,
That's the
yeah.
display.
You put it on the shelf. You put them all around it.
Well, on that note, gentlemen, I think that should do it. Unless, is there anything else that either of you guys wanted to talk about? Anything we didn't get to that you really wanted to bring up?
I don't think so.
No, I think we're good.
Yeah, I don't think so.
All right. Well, I thank both of you for being part of this season premiere of My Comic Shop History. It was great speaking to both of you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Slightly different schedule this season. New episodes are still going to be released on Wednesdays, but it's going to be every other Wednesday instead of every Wednesday. So it'll still be 12 episodes, but every other week. So My Comic Shop History will run through the very beginning of October. So you get more months of My Comic Shop History, but same number of episodes. But thank you to everyone who tuned into this. Please keep tuning in. We got some really fun, interesting stuff coming up. And as always, don't be a flat squirrel. My Comic Shop History is a Flat Squirrel production. Please visit flatsquirrelproductions.com to explore my other projects, including My Comic Shop documentary, By Spoon, the J. Mizell story, and the forthcoming Wacky Man, The Rise of a Puppeteer. Be sure to subscribe to My Comic Shop History on iTunes and catch up on Season 1. Like My Comic Shop History on Facebook and follow me on Twitter at DesiWestside. Likes, ratings, and reviews are always greatly appreciated. Thank you for listening and continuing to support this show.